Hi, and welcome to this week's Preps Preview. I'm Justin Kahn. This is Alex McNamee. We're going to kind of jump right in and do our top fives for this week. I think I know like the top of our top fives are probably going to be fairly similar, but I think there's a lot of different sort of options in those bottom ones. So let's hear yours, Alex.
It's kind of opening up now. I think you're right a little bit. And last week, I didn't have St. Teresa in my top five, but I think Aaron kind of talked me into them with Christian Williams back, and they're my number 5 team. He makes those Bulldogs all the more interesting and so much better. And playing without him for the first half of the year, I think whether a team's playing without their top player for an injury or whatever it is, it makes them better, a little more deeper. You have other guys stepping up now, and now St. Teresa is starting to look a little bit more like what we expected of them before the season started. At number 4, I have TEUTOPOLIS. Big win against Nashville last night, and that really looks good for them. Nashville is the team that knocked them out in the Super Sectionals last year. They go and get revenge for that game, and it was a really tightly fought game. They sort of had the lead most of the way, which was really impressive. Nashville, I think, is the number 1 team in that class. But to beat them, big upset. They move up a little bit in my top 5. Number 3, I have Lincoln. Looking good still, kind of taking care of business at this point, and certainly with the CS8 play and CS8 tournament, they're starting to win and just kind of winning games how they normally do. Gavin Block looking outstanding still. And then number 2, rounding out the top 5, number 2, you have Dieterich. Number 1, Warrensburg. I thought about flip-flopping them just to do something a little bit different because right now they go hand in hand.
Okay, fairly similar on my end. I ended up not putting Lincoln in my top 5, though I think by the end of the year they're in the top 5. I think there's no question about that. But at this point, I did. They had the loss to Lanphier recently, and they did have the loss to Jacksonville earlier this year. Though I think at this point they've kind of erased those memories, and they were really impressive the other night against Eisenhower. And I think Eisenhower came away going, "Wow, this is a really good team." My number 5 team is St. Teresa as well. I was so impressed with them on Friday against Meridian that playing without Christian Williams. They're able to beat a Meridian team who I think at the start of the year was in my top 5. And those guys have really developed, and it's funny. It's funny because when they have Christian, it just seems like all those guys really do fall into a role that fits them better than they have without Christian in there. And he's such a facilitator. He can pretty much be whatever you want him to be on the floor. If you need him to step up and score, 25, 30 points, he can do that. If you want him to be more of a, distributor, he can do that. And I think that's what's so special about him and about this team is that he has the guys around him now that maybe he hasn't had the last couple of years that, they can really make a run. And of course, they're going to have to go up against Warrensburg at some point. Right. We'll talk more about that here in a second.
Right.
Number 4, they did lose. I have MacArthur. They did lose on on Saturday against a pretty good Chatham Glenwood team. They'll get another shot at them. It was a weird game where they just kind of didn't come out, with much. They were trailing, I think, 44-22. Kind of woke up and made a run late. Played pretty well against Rochester on Monday. I still feel like MacArthur is. I still feel like they're the best team in the conference. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll talk more about them here in a second too. But I still feel like they're a top 5 team. Number 3, I went with TEUTOPOLIS. I thought about actually moving them up with that win against Nashville, even maybe into a 2 or 1 spot.
All right.
And but I did not. I kept my 1 and 2 the same. T-Town's actually ranked ahead of Warrensburg in the Class 2A poll, the AP poll. So, but I still feel like, Warrensburg is the best team right now going in our area. Though I don't, Warrensburg, they did have a nice win against Petersburg Porta. So they do have some good wins on their resume, but, beating Nashville is about as good as it gets at this point. Yeah. Number 2, Dieterich, they're really rolling right now. It'll be nice for them to kind of get tested here coming up in the National Trail Tournament. They'll get St. Anthony, who's a pretty good team. So, we'll see. We'll find out some more about them going forward. But right now they're really rolling. And number one, Warrensburg just. I know they had a little bit of a hiccup against LSA where it was close for a while, but I think LSA is kind of finding their game with, and Hunter York in particular is playing well. But right now, I mean, it's just kind of hard to argue against a team that's undefeated and playing as well and as talented as Warrensburg is. And I want to talk a little bit about just kind of what their chances are of going undefeated here. Honestly, I'm not going to make any prediction of what's going to happen in the postseason. I mean, are they a state title contender? I think so. I mean, I don't think there's any question that they'll compete, at a high level. But they're going to have to play St. Teresa, not only probably in the regionals. I think early in the season, I felt like Meridian was the team that they would face. Right now, with St. T beating Meridian without Christian Williams, you got to figure, right now St. T's kind of jumped over Meridian, and it's possible that they'll face each other 3 times, Warrensburg and St. Teresa, in about a 3-week span. We're not going to see this game for another 2 weeks, so it's one of these things now where we're just kind of, okay, I wish that was tonight. I'm ready to see these 2 teams play. Though it'll be nice, I guess, for Christian to kind of work his way in to the lineup as well. So
right. If he even needs it at this point.
Right. So we'll have the first matchup. I'm guessing will be on February 6th in the final of the CIC tournament. Though we have seen when it was back in the old days of the OCA tournament, that tournament's always weird. Where there always seems like there's an upset, or something strange happens. It never seems like it's the final. I can go back and look. Last year, of course, Sullivan kind of came out of nowhere and won it. So, I think if you go back and look, it's always Meridian won it 2 years ago with a team that was, I think under 500 going into the tournament. So, when you start banking on the matchup, that tournament has had a sort of a history of not happening. But I think it's fairly safe to think that that's a possible matchup. Then their regular season matchup is on February 20th, which is the last day of the regular season, and then I like the chances of that being the regional final, and that'll be at St. T on February 27th. So, boy, that's going to be a lot. I mean, those were great games last year. I mean, of course, last year it was Warrensburg knocking off St. T at Warrensburg in the regional final. So, I mean, that was sort of the big matchup last year, and I think that's what it's coming down to this year.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. And like you said, the conference tournaments can be so unpredictable. You have those other CIC teams like Shelbyville, who's having a good year, and Meridian. Meridian is also playing really well, and who knows when they can put together their best nights anymore. They're so up and down this season, they could put it all together. And Sullivan, talking with their coach last week, he's still pretty confident in that team too. That's another team that could do damage, but it's going to be a fun February with all of those key matchups against Warrensburg and St. T coming up and playing out that way. So
we have a little while. We have a little while to wait now. We have a couple weeks now, but in that time we have MacArthur, which has. I mean, these guys are going to have. I mean, they really need to prepare for this, and it's sort of already started. They had 2 games. They've already had 2 games Saturday. They played Monday. They played, and now they have Eisenhower Wednesday night, which even though Eisenhower probably isn't at their level at this point, it's a city game, and those are always crazy. They played Jacksonville Friday, who's they haven't been as good lately, but they had a good run there, and it's not a bad team. They play Lincoln Saturday, which is the one we've kind of all been. We want to see how they do against Lincoln, and then they turn around next Friday and play Glenwood, who just knocked them off. So that's a tough stretch, and they could go 1-3, they could go 4-0, and I think that I really like this MacArthur team. I think they're capable of a lot, but this stretch will sort of decide regional seeding and just confidence in general here heading into the final stretch. I think this is going to mean a lot for them.
Yeah, and sort of going through that again, you have Eisenhower, who's a team who seems to play up to opponents really well. They have a win against Lanphier, which is big there. Jacksonville is a team that beat Lincoln and then again played them tough, although in a loss. And Lincoln, of course, they're the ones that are in my top 5, and MacArthur's not, and those are for different reasons on recent wins and losses. But that stretch, they're going to prove if they're the best team in that conference or not, and it's the time to do it.
Yeah, and offensively, they have so many weapons, and so that's why it surprised me that they played like that against Glenwood the other night, where they struggled to score. I just don't see that being a trend. I think that going forward, there's just enough guys on that team that can score that they'll remain dangerous and really are still poised to have one of their best seasons in a long, long time. So a lot to take in here over the next 3 weeks, basketball wise. This has been a really fun season, and I think it's going to this next month is going to be about as good of an end of the season as I can remember here in recent years. So make sure you're checking us out on Twitter and also on HRpreps.com. We'll see you out at the games.